go ahead and kick things off with some introductions. First off, I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar today, discussing how we can maximize heat exchanger life. My name is Clint Martin. I'm the Director of Commercial Operations with Metalforms. I've been with the company 13 years now. I first joined the company on the supply chain side of things, and then after a couple of years, transitioned over to more of a commercial operations role. In that role, my primary objective is to connect our customers with our sales teams, our engineering team, our operations team, and make sure that our teams are meeting your needs across all aspects of the business. With me today, I have my colleague Arvind. I'll let Arvind introduce himself.
Hello everyone, my name is Aravind Valaisamy. I'm the engineering manager at Metalforms. I've been with Metalforms close to 22 years now and started as an engineering draftsman, moved up as a design engineer, and been in this role for the last 11 years. I'm typically usually a primary point of contact for the customers. I help them with the engineering and technical questions, and I'm happy to be here today in this webinar.
So hopefully we've got some familiar faces in the audience, although we can't see you. But if we've got some new folks joining, just wanted to take a minute and just kind of introduce you to Metalforms, and for those who've been with us for a while, just bring you up to speed. We've had some exciting things happen over the past several years. So Metalforms, we were founded in 1968. We're rapidly approaching our 60th year in business. We're based out of Beaumont, Texas. That's where our primary shop always had been, but now we have additional shop locations in Houston on the northwest side of town, as well as a international location near Milan, Italy. So we're excited about the growth that we've seen over the last couple of years. A large part of that growth was driven by the fact that we were acquired by Transtech group of companies back in 2023. So with that, now we can offer a lot broader capabilities across not only Metalforms, but our sister companies as well. So happy to connect with anybody who may want to learn some more information about that. But one of the big key drivers to our growth was in 2024, Metalforms had the opportunity to acquire the assets of Koch Heat Transfer. And with that acquisition, Metalforms now becomes the OEM, or became the OEM provider for those legacy brands that you probably have in your facility, such as Brown Fin Tube, Alco Hairpin Technologies, as well as some shell and tube technologies like Boss Hatton and our proprietary twisted tube retrofit option for shell and tube. So lots of exciting new things happening at Metalforms. But that being said, we still are Metalforms at the core. Who we are and how we do business and what we're wanting to do has remained the same. Our overall vision is to become the preferred partner for our customers, and we're going to do that by safely providing reliable and on-time solutions for your process and heat transfer equipment. With that comes a focus on supporting the full life cycle of your equipment, and that's really what we're going to be talking about today. With some of the repair discussions that we're gonna just have or talk about, and while we've grown, a core function of our business is still reporting or providing those repair solutions for our customers. So a little bit about today's agenda. First off, we're just going to talk about some key factors on why repair may be your best option versus replacement. We're going to help understand some of the costs and risks that you need to be considering whenever you're trying to determine which path you want to take. And then we're going to dive off into 3 different case studies. The first one is going to be a modification study on a U-bundle modification that we did. And then we're going to dive off into a retube case study. Retube's probably the most common of the major shell and tube and hairpin heat exchanger repairs that you can do. It's also the one that brings it most back to original life. And then finally, we're going to discuss everybody's just dreaded emergency unplanned outage situation, where we have to turn things around. Customer calls us up, they're like, hey, I need this yesterday kind of situation. And so, talk about all the different ways that we can help and support. And then we're going to close with just some risk mitigation and key takeaways to get extended life out of it.
So Metalform's core capabilities are we are specialized in design manufacturing of shell and tube heat exchangers, vessels, and process piping across various material, temperature, and pressure ratings. With so Metalforms through the acquisition of Coat Heat Transfer in 2024 is now have the expertise to design and fabricate airpin exchangers, tank heaters, twisted tube bundles, and we were able to achieve all of these through our core engineering team that we have in-house. So we currently have a little over 26 degree engineers from mechanical, chemical, and industrial background. And out of that, we have 3 dedicated thermal engineers who have over 90 years of total experience. And with that team, we were able to provide support for all the exchanges, and also we were able to do maintenance, repair, and replacement parts through our dedicated team.
All right, thanks, Arvin. So, over the 60 years that we've been in business, we've really built out our capabilities to not only be able to provide, world-class fabrication to support your heat transfer and pressure vessel equipment, but also to be able to provide these repair services. One of the biggest ways that we can do that is just with our in-house capabilities. So we've got vast capabilities under one roof here in Beaumont, and then now you expand that out to our Houston facility as well. We've increased not only our workforce, but the equipment that we have at our disposal to be able to support both long lead and repair type work. With that comes full machining capabilities, full drilling capabilities, fabrication capabilities, quality control, testing, inspection, as well as blasting and coating capabilities at our facility in Beaumont. So all of that, we've got 170,000 square foot at our facility in Beaumont. We've got almost 40,000 in Houston. So pretty big footprint to be able to handle a lot of different things. We do that. We're set up in a way that we can support not only the long lead fabrication, but we can slip those repairs in to our schedule and not affect that long lead fabrication. And one of the ways that we do that is through our 24/7 capabilities. So Metalforms runs 3 shifts standard. We have a day shift and a night shift that works Monday through Thursday. And then we have a separate crew that comes on and works Friday, Saturday, Sunday. As needed, if our customer goes into turnaround, we need to keep some things on schedule. We need to slip some repairs in. We can switch gears very quickly to 24/7 capabilities, and we'll bring that night shift onto the weekends. We also have the flexibility to bring some weekend people onto weekdays onto weekends, so we can really ramp up our capacity and throughput so that we're handling those emergency repairs without jeopardizing any of those long lead deliveries. And then one of the things that Metalforms really has just excelled in over the years is just the expedited fabrication. If you need a replacement bundle quickly, or maybe we get into a repair and then we decide, hey, we've got to go replacement, because of those expanded capabilities, a large amount of drilling capacity, things like that, we can quickly get ahead of that and get back on schedule. So overall, from a strategy standpoint, what are we trying to accomplish whenever we're considering repairs? The first, and I'm going to focus a little bit more on the commercial side of the things, the dollars and cents. The first thing that's going to happen here is going to be you're reducing your capital expenditure. You've already spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe $1 million on the original exchanger. Repairs are a way to extend that life, just like you put new parts into your car versus just replacing a car. There's nothing wrong with the 75% of the exchanger. We just need to replace 25% of it, so we can support there to get more out of your existing capital and avoid those capital expenditures, especially when market conditions are tight. The other thing that we're going to accomplish is we're going to minimize the downtime. And our our third case study, you're going to see the impacts of that and how a repair strategy can directly impact your downtime and maybe being able to stay on production versus having to bring your unit completely down. Extending the equipment life. A lot of these exchangers we get in here, they've been in service for 25, 30 plus years. And by performing a retube or refurbishing some gasket surfaces, things like that, we can get another 5-year run, 10-year run, maybe 20-year run, maybe even longer than that if we're looking at doing some upgrades. And then overall, as I see the industry, everybody's trying to reduce their carbon footprint, moving to sustainability initiatives. Reusing your equipment supports that. That's less metal that's going into the scrapyard. We're essentially recycling that equipment for future use.
Clint mentioned some of the advantages of going to the repair. These are some of the operational hurdles that the plant encounters when they have to replace a complete exchanger. The first one is the capital approval cycle. Typically for a complete exchangers, the approval process is lengthy because it involves several signatures from the executive level, and that's paperwork, and getting the capital approval takes several weeks or even months in some cases. The next hurdle is the long lead time. When you're fabricating a complete exchanger, there are several components on the exchanger that can have a delivery time of over several weeks, especially like expansion joint, flange and flute joint, etc. And all these delivery of the material will affect the shop availability and the production schedule as well. And complete exchanges also need to go through a full engineering requalification, meaning any complete exchanges has to be redesigned for the current ASME code and bring them into the state compliance. What this does is sometimes with the existing nozzles and the nozzle location and support locations have to be modified, which may require piping modification in the field. All this will add additional time during the exchanger replacement. Another thing that can also affect the operation is the process change. So during repair, if you have to change any metallurgy, it can be accomplished through a simple HTRO run and evaluating. But however, when it's a complete exchanger, and if there is a major process change, that will affect the exchanger size, which could result in relocating nozzles, supports, etc., which will affect the shop's overall installation time as well.
All right. So just kind of continuing on that, and again, talking more dollars and cents here, typically you're going to see between a 30 to 60% cost savings going the repair route or refurb route versus replacement. Big part of that is we're able to reuse a lot of the existing components and refurbish those. And then there's a whole nother cost aspect of it, and that's going to be more of your indirect cost, and that's going to be things that tie into if you're having to redesign a unit and your supports are changing, your piping's changing. Now you've got to make piping modifications in the field. You've got to relocate your supports, maybe rebuild some foundations. So the cost can really add up to make those projects not move forward. And so in those cases, that's where repair is gonna really make more sense for you. The fast turnaround, a good shop, which Metalforms is geared to be able to support this type of work, is going to be able to turn these repairs around very, very quickly. So we kind of joke around whenever a customer will call us and they're like, hey, I need an expedited option. Well, we have expedited, we have super expedited, and then we have it needed yesterday. So there's really different levels of that speed at which we can move, and there's different justifications to move at those different speeds. But we, across the board, from our sales team all the way through our operations and execution team, is geared to kind of think like that. And so, we work closely with our customer to be able to make those turnarounds in maybe days or weeks versus weeks and months on a new build. And then again, just to touch on the sustainability, you're doing less welding, you're doing less machining whenever you're repairing versus replacements. So our shop is using less energy. Your facility is using less equipment. And then we're able to just get your equipment and your plant back online faster so that we can get those production levels to where they need to be. And again, just the no redesign is a big component here, as Arvin touched on, just because change management is a challenge. We see that a lot of times where something was changed, but it wasn't documented, and that can cause some problems. And I'm sure the folks that are working in the plant can understand the headaches that causes.
So for our first case study today, we picked a unique situation which has more design input, which we call is a U-bundle vibration retrofit. So one of our biggest refinery had a issue on two of the new bundles they purchased, and both bundles are a solid duplex 2205 metallurgy. So we have an actual picture on the screen, so you can see actually the size of the bundle itself. So the risk factor that the customer evaluated is the bundle did not have enough U-bend support on the actual bundle that was fabricated. So they determined that the excessive vibration on the U-bend support could cause premature tube failure, and that can lead to an unplanned outage and replacement of the bundle or a retube, etc. So the challenge that we faced with this project is typically the U-bend supports are constructed when the bundle is tubed up. So in this case, since the bundle is already fabricated and the bundle did had one U-bend support in the middle, it poses a challenge for our team to come up with a plan how we're going to add additional supports. So the solution that we came up with is coming up with a retrofitted design vibration cage, which is unique to this particular bundle. So based on our solution, we determined that we got to run a complete vibration analysis using HTRI from our engineering team. And then it was determined that this bundle requires 4 additional U-bend support to function properly. So when we identified that, then our engineering team and the drafting team worked together, created a 3D model, and then we come up with a unique flat bar and a rod-based locking system assembly with a wrapper band on the outside to make sure the bundle can be retrofitted with this U-bend support. And then once this was approved by our customer, then to make sure the flat bars that is used in this construction did not interfere with the already existing tube bends, and to make sure also that the flat bar installation is not going to affect any of the tubes, we went with the laser cut technology for making those flat bars. And then the installation also was done very carefully, slowly, to make sure there's no damage being done to the existing tubes. And we finally able to make the construction complete, and the structural integrity bundle was achieved. So after the fabrication is complete, we had 100% retrofit success rate, and the vibration cage was successfully designed, fabricated, and installed into the existing bundle. As you guys can see from the picture shown, that is the flat bar design that we came up with. So there was already a U-bend support in the very middle of the bundle. So to add 4 more vibration support, we came up with this unique design where it had a 45-degree V-notch style flat bar, and it was installed. So the customer didn't have to pay for a new bundle. All they had was the retrofit charges. And then the bundle was successfully delivered back to the customer. And during the turnaround, both the bundles were installed this year. And from the feedback we got from customer, both bundles were performing thermally and mechanically with good integrity. And then the customer was happy with the service that we provided.
All right, thanks for that, Arvin. I mean, that case really demonstrates kind of some of the outside of the box thinking that our team was able to come up with, because most fabricators are probably going to say no to that repair, and they're going to look to just sell you a replacement bundle. And so we were excited to be able to provide that solution to our customer. Moving on to our next one, we're going to talk about particularly about a fixed tube sheet strip and retube, but excuse me. But just retubes in general. Basically, there's going to be 2 different types. There's going to be a removable bundle strip and retube, which is a little bit more of a straightforward repair process and rebuild process. And then there's going to be a fixed tube sheet, strip and retube. And this is an area where we feel we really excel at these. We do a lot of these every year for our customers. And a lot of these units are very typically large. A lot of them are large. A lot of them are complex. Have some different type of components that typically have very long lead items. And that's going to be the one that we're going to talk about in particular today. But just overall, some of the common failure modes that you're going to encounter that are going to lead to the need to retube is going to be your internal or external tube corrosion. The tubes are probably the weakest link on a heat exchanger. Very thin material. There's a lot of them, so just the probability of them failing is going to be a bit higher. And then we may see some issues due to erosion from high velocity flow. The third case study we're going to talk about, that was a steam fretting issue that was driving that retube need. And then just maybe you're having some fouling and deposit buildup that's causing some premature corrosion, things like that. Or you're just experiencing reduced thermal efficiency. We see a lot of units come in. People will plug tubes, vent and plug tubes, which is a kind of a Band-Aid fix to these exchangers that you can do to keep them running. But once you hit a certain percentage of your tubes that are plugged, then you're going to run into the point where that exchanger is not working the way that it was originally designed. Some of the things that we're able to salvage on these fixed tube sheet retubes, one's going to be your shell and channel components. We're able to reclaim those the majority of the time, reuse them. Sometimes maybe the channels don't even come; they stay at the plant, and they just ship us the tube sheet to tube sheet, depending on the configuration of the unit. But anytime we're going to get those components in, we're going to do full blast and inspect of those components, make sure that your gasket surfaces are where they need to be. We're going to try to identify any repairs that you may not know about. We're going to do that through our detailed QC inspection, which we share with our customer our findings, and then we discuss together what the recommended and agreed to path forward is before we move on any additional repairs. But one of the biggest things that you're going to get is you're going to get that mechanical guarantee on your replaced parts. That's big. And then you're going to get the original system footprint. So we're not changing nozzle locations. We're not changing foundations. You're going to keep those indirect costs at a minimum to non-existent, and we're going to be able to just replace what needs to be replaced. So that's going to start with the tubes. That's going to be new material. We're able to maintain that full tube length that was in the original unit. Typically, we're going to go with new gaskets, studs. Whether or not we do a full paint job or a partial paint job is driven primarily on schedule. This particular job is highlighted up here in the top right picture. We just painted the cut parts. They had a pretty tight window for the work that had to be done, and so the customer selected to just go with get the fresh welds painted, so it's protected. And then I believe they maybe did some painting in the field. But we do have the blast and paint capabilities, so we can perform that in house if your schedule allows. Obviously getting back a brand new looking shiny exchanger is going to be very beneficial to you. So let's talk about some of the things that we can do to kind of plan ahead and avoid the drama. And this was the case on this particular unit. The original scope that the customer came to us was a retube only, just replacing tubes. But we looked at it and we're like, hey, you've got some problematic scenarios here. One being this unit had a hub tube sheet. Hub tube sheets are hard to handle, a little bit more difficult to fabricate. They have a much longer lead time than just a standard forging tube sheet or a plate tube sheet. So there's that added complexity. And what we did is we got with the customer and we worked with them, and warned them about that potential issue. It's an older exchanger. If those tube holes are bad or that tube sheet needs to be replaced, now instead of being able to get this unit back in within your window, you're now looking at a 16-week lead time just to get the material. So the path forward that the customer chose was to just kind of go ahead and replace some of these components. And so for this particular unit, we replaced the tube sheet, the baffles, and the tubes. So we kind of gave them a new bundle, so to speak, for a fixed tube sheet unit. That early risk assessment really helped protect that turnaround schedule. By replacing any of those components, it may be some added cost in material, but Also, by doing things like replacing the baffles, we can eliminate a lot of the hours associated with having to remove each one of those tubes to reuse the baffles. So on some larger units, that may actually be more cost beneficial than going back with just retubes. So we try to communicate that with our customers and work with you up front to avoid any surprises. With the overall intention of protecting the turnaround schedule. Schedule drives everything in our businesses, and we know that the turnarounds are all eyes on it. And so anytime we're planning, there's a planned outage and we have a planned repair, we certainly want to do everything that we can to avoid any kind of surprises and potential future dilemma. So the most common issue that's going to lead to some of that dilemma is going to be your oversized tube holes. We understand this, and within our repair process, we take steps to mitigate that. And so on a unit like this, let's say we were just retubing it, and we weren't replacing anything else, we're going to partially strip some of that stuff out, and we're going to measure those tube holes on the baffles on the tube sheet. We're going to make sure, doing some spot checks, that we're not seeing a trend. If we see some early oversized holes, you're going to probably see a lot more as you go through the reclamation process. And so we'll stop there. We'll communicate with the customer. We'll put our heads together, look at schedule, look at cost, look at really what's feasible. And we feel like, or we really hope that our customers treat us or think of us as an extension of your team. We're here to support you. We want your unit back online and running. And so we're looking to get that equipment out of the shop as fast as we possibly can for you. So we'll work to do that early. If you find out late on those tube holes, what's going to end up happening is you're gonna either bust your schedule because you're going to have to replace a component, or you're going to have to make the choice to just accept them out of the team of tolerance, and you're going to run the risk of poor performance, vibration issues, future tube leaks. And so you're essentially putting a ticking, something that could potentially go bad for you back into service. So for this particular exchanger, very successful project for us. Customer is very, very happy. First off, we extended the equipment life. This was a unique, critical exchanger for them. Very, very, very long lead time. If they would have replaced the exchanger, it was an old exchanger, so there were guaranteed to be some design changes and a lot of modifications needed. So this was definitely the best path forward for them. And because we gave them new tube sheets, new baffles, and new tubes, they essentially got a pretty brand new exchanger. We refaced all of the flanges that needed to be corrected so that they had a good seal. By doing that, we minimized their capital expenditure. This was run under their turnaround and maintenance budget. It wasn't necessarily a CapEx expense like it would have been for a new exchanger. And most importantly, there were no operational delays. So the overall time frame on this project was close to 6 months because of the long lead time on both the tubes and the tube sheet. But we were able to save money by ordering tubes on a long lead time, and then we were able to maintain that schedule by getting those parts in-house, built and ready to go, so that once they pulled the unit out of service for their turnaround, we had a 45-day window to get this thing turned around. And so that's what not 45, 35. We got it turned around within that window. So customers excited, we were excited. Just another example of some of the things that we can do.
So last case study is a emergency head tube or bundle retube that we perform. So the problem on this one came from the customer is the time constraint. So customer had unexpected exchanger failure on a hairpin exchanger, and the unit has to go offline. And this particular exchanger was very critical to put the unit back online, and it was putting the production at risk. So when the customer reached out to us, we did immediately mobilized a team, and then we looked through the original drawings. And our recommendation to the customer was to do a full retube, replacing the tubes only. And at that point, we told the customer we can repair the tube sheet and the baffles, and we were hoping that the tube sheet is still reusable at the time. Our technical team was on board, and our procurement team was on board to make sure we can get this done. And we gave a exceptional delivery turnaround time on this project, and the customer went ahead and gave us a PO to move forward. So we immediately mobilized our logistic team to pick up the bundle. Once we get the bundle, our bundle team was already in place to do a quick retube, and immediately the retube was completed. We were able to make an assessment on the existing baffles and the tube sheet through our QC team, and made sure that existing tube holes and the gasket surfaces were all acceptable. And then we were able to move on to the next phase, which will be the retubing, tube end welding, and rolling the tubes. And then we put the bundle on hydro test, and then we were able to successfully complete the code hydro test, and then the bundle was ready to leave our shop. So I kept this as a surprise to show you how much time it took us to do this whole process. So we were able to, by the time we pick up the bundle, we were able to return back the bundle to customer in 36 hours. And this was made possible through our constant and continued communication with the customer. We kept the customer on track and updated them on a daily basis, and provided them feedback on what's going on and where we are at on the schedule. So that was one of the key reasons why we were able to complete this with a 100% productivity. And then the customer was able to install the bundle on time. The plant doesn't have to go through any shutdown cost. And then since we had the OEM drawings for this project, we were able to place the order for the tubes ahead of time. And then our QC able to determine that there is no resurfacing needed. And we also did a QC write-up to make sure the existing split ring grooves are good for the customer to have the installation in the field, because that is one of the added service we do. We want to make sure when we ship back parts to customer, they don't have any problem with putting the unit back together with the existing parts at the field level. So this one of this case that shows that quick turnarounds can be completed successfully with the team, and we have all the department in place.
All right. So next up, let's talk about some of the things that we can do. We've touched on several of these already. Some proactive preventative maintenance type things that we can do during the repair process. So similar to you bring your car in to get an oil change, we're not necessarily going to try to sell you a cabin air filter every single time like the car dealerships do. But, there's definitely some things that are beneficial that you can do. So first off is going to be your gaskets and seals. We always recommend replacing those. With that, we're going to inspect those gasket surfaces. We're going to make sure that those things are going to seal up properly for you. If we need to perform any weld buildup and remachining, we have all of the capabilities to do that. So that's a very common kind of adder to the scope that we'll see anytime we have some repairs come in. Then any bundles that we get in here, we're going to inspect the baffles and supports, even if all we're doing is just replacing the tubes. A damaged tie rod or broken tie rod is very easy and cheap to replace at that time versus putting it back in service as is and then run the risk of some problems down the road. Another thing that you may be looking at doing during the repair process, especially these are going to be on more of your planned outages, is going to be evaluate your different material upgrades. If you're having some tube vibration issues, maybe that's the time to address that, like we identified in that first case study. Or maybe you're dealing with some cooling water issues, like many people here in the Gulf Coast particularly do, and you need to make the switch to 2205 duplex. So that's something that our team can work with you on the front end on, run any necessary calculations to make sure that no other additional modifications are repaired, and then work with your team to manage that change to make sure everything's documented and you can get that extended life out of that exchanger. And then, corrosion allowances, that's a big thing. We want to always make sure that there's enough meat left on the bone, so to speak, to get you through to that next outage, get a full run out of that exchanger. So we'll verify that. If we need to do some weld buildup, we can perform those tasks at our facility and help you out there.
Below are some of the key takeaways on the heat exchanger repairs. So all the case studies we discussed today have one or all of these incorporated into those. The repairs significantly reduce capital costs, like we discussed earlier. The cost of a complete exchanger versus a repair will be anywhere from 30 to 60% less. For the full replacement, this is very critical, especially if all the other existing components on the exchanger can be reused. And the mentioning the lengthier approval cycle that the plant has to go through, the repairs become a easy decision. And then the repairs also extend the life. If primarily the failing component is tubes and the tube sheets, which is pretty much what the exchanger sees on, these are the only components that see both sides of the fluid. So retube with replacing very few other components, that retrofit helps extend the service life. If an exchanger worked for 20 years without having any corrosion on the shell and channel components, then doing a retube with the new tubes and tube sheet and baffle assembly can give another 20 years life to the exchanger. All repairs also provide support sustainability to the plants. We are using less material to fabricate. There is less waste. And then this is also will help the refineries and plants to meet their yearly sustainability goals, because they are still reusing an exchanger with new components only as needed. With fabricators like Metalform, who have extensive resources and experience, we can reduce the downtime that is needed to do a repair and then bring the units back to the plant within the turnaround schedule. And that's easily achievable on a repair time frame than waiting on a complete exchanger that is identified during the turnaround time.
All right, just to kind of wrap things up in closing, what we encourage customers to do is look at a repair as a potential strategic opportunity. Sometimes these repairs, especially if they come up in an emergency situation, it's an inconvenience for sure. But even in those inconveniences, there's an opportunity to get better, whether that's better performance or just longer life out of your equipment, or just getting up and running. We can certainly support that. I mentioned earlier the metallurgy upgrades. Same thing with if we're experiencing some thermal issues that you're having, we encourage you to reach out to our team. Our in-house experts are here to assist in those needs, to give you some different options, especially on any of these kind of planned outages and repairs. We can get a lot accomplished for you to help your operations. And then keep us in mind, for any emergency repairs, phones answered 24/7. If you call after hours, you're going to get an answering service. They're going to transfer the call to either myself, Arvin, or our general manager, Jeremy Hubel. Any three of us can get things moving for you in a rapid manner to be able to take care of any of those needs. And so now I'm just going to kind of open things up to some questions. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it into the Q&A section here. And again, certainly appreciate everyone's time today. There's going to be a copy of this posted online. So, if you want to go back and revisit something, just see my smiling face again, feel free to do that, but certainly thank you for your time. And Arvin, thank you for contributing on this, and welcome any questions now. All right, I'll let Arvin take that first one.
So typically for every tube size, there is a acceptable tube hole tolerance on the tube sheets. One of them, like say, take example for a 3/4 tube. If it's a standard fit, the hole size for a 3/4 tube has to be 0.0760, and then team all-outs has to have 96% of the tube to be within this level, and then there is another 4% you can be plus 0.004. So there is a table in TEMA that determines that, and it changes for every tube size. So when we get a retube, after we strip the tubes off the tube sheet, we check all the tube holes in the tube sheet, and then our QC will come up with a chart, and then they determine the percentage of oversize if there is any, and then we'll take that to our customers to determine what the path forward is. Now, then we can do a couple of things. If the tube holes are oversized and if you are in a time crunch, there are a couple of alternate solutions. We can either add an additional serration to the tube sheet and then do to expand the tubes again. If it's a welded joint, it is really not a concern because most of your seal is coming from the tube and welding. So as long as we have an approval from the customer engineering, then we can reuse the tube sheet as is, because TMOS are standard practice recommendations only. So as long as we have a mutual acceptance on reusing the parts, we can still go ahead and use it. Okay, we got a couple of other questions popped up. We have a question from Mr. David. Okay, I can quickly answer this one. What if we don't have a drawings for an exchanger? Yes. Typically, we'll need the exchanger or a bundle on a one-day turnaround in our shop. But if there is any reason the bundle or the exchanger cannot be sent to our shop, and if you guys are in the middle of a turnaround, we can still make a visit to the plant and we can make quickly high-end blueprint drawings. We have a draftsman over like 25-year experience, and they can come along with an engineer and then make all the dimensions that we need. And then if that's something that you got to put the unit back in service temporarily, then we can bring those drawings back to our shop. And then we can give you an estimate for a replacement bundle or an exchanger. Our preference is to have the exchanges in our shop, but if you have to go back and make iron blueprint, we can do shell and tube exchangers, vessels, air pins, anything that we can fabricate and repair. Yes, we can get those information, make drawings for you.
And then I'll take that question on the Canadian installations. Yes. Yeah, so we can support repairs, retubes on hairpin bundles. Any of the brands that we are the OEMs on. That's a new service that Metalforms is providing that the previous owner, Coquille Transfer, did not. They only supplied new equipment, and so we can certainly work with your team. Obviously, Canada's a little bit further than from Beaumont than maybe Houston is. But if it makes sense for you from a schedule standpoint, and we can work out the logistics, we can certainly work with your team to provide any of those solutions.
We have actually done some alterations for units in Canada as well, so we have experience in using them and repairing units in Canada. Yes, we use a lot of nickel-based alloys for tube sheets. If you're talking about a solid alloy, yes, we can do solid duplex alloys, duplex tube sheets. Or if it is a preference to have a clad, like on a fixed tube sheet exchanger, if the customer does not want dissimilar wells, then we can still do a clad plate, or we can do a solid tube sheet, if a solid nickel-based alloy tube sheet, if that is a requirement from the customer.
So when we're reclaiming the tube sheets for future use, the first thing that we're going to do, especially like on a fixed tube sheet exchanger or even a removable bundle, is we're gonna use our bandsaw. We're going to saw that tube sheet off of that unit so that we can get to reclaiming that tube sheet at the same time that we're stripping out the tubes from the baffle assembly, if we're going to be reusing that. That's going to move over. We use a variety of different equipment, from radial arm drills to our vertical lathes, to be able to get those tubes bumped out of there, get the tube holes cleaned up and prepped, especially if we're going to be going back with tube and welding again. As Arvin mentioned, if we need to, we can add extra serrations, but it's basically going to kind of go through the same steps that a new tube sheet would, but we're just not starting from fresh metal. All of the same quality control checks are going to be put into place, checking tube holes, checking dimensions, things like that. Okay, well, looks like that's all of the questions. Again, I want to thank everyone for for taking the time. Oh, there's another one.
Well, what section of NBAC repairs fall about? So if it's a straight replacement without any calculation or any change in metallurgy, the Part 3 NBIC covers the repair section. So that's where all the repairs are done under. And it's so once we successfully complete the repairs, we provide a R1 form for repairs. And then re-rate and alteration also comes under the same part of the NBIC, which will have its own R2 forms handled. And typically for all alteration and re-rates, we will also provide mechanical calculations to support the alteration and re-rate. So these are all can be done before the turnaround, and then we can submit the calculations and drawings for approval during the retube process or the repair process. Usually it doesn't take much long. That's all we got, Clint.
Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you everyone for taking the time to join us. I hope you found this to be informative. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to either Arvind or myself. And we're happy to connect you with whichever team member can address your question the most. Again, we've got our thermal team to evaluate any kind of performance issues that you may be having with an exchanger, and then we can provide some solutions to you there. If you just want to find out some more just general information about Metalforms and our full suite of capabilities, as well as what the Transtech group of companies can offer, please feel free to reach out to me. Happy to connect with you on that.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time.